Hey, what's going on everyone? Welcome back to the biggest tier list of Fire Emblem units that anyone has ever made. In case you don't know, every now and then I make a video tiering every single Fire Emblem character. I can't do every character in one video though, so my Patreons get to submit characters for me to do next. And today I have about 21 characters for you to tier from between Fire Emblem 3 and Fire Emblem 5. The last few batches I've been doing them in, I've been splitting them in 2. But there's been so many Patreons lately with so much support, I'm gonna split these in 3 instead. So today we're doing some characters from FV3 and FV4 and FV5, and next time I got FV6 up to FV9 for you guys, and then after that we're doing all the leftover games, all the more modern Fire Emblem games. So yeah, that's what we're doing today. And let me just go over the units that we're tiering today. If you want to go and be my Patreon, I really appreciate it. It's super cool. It helps me make super good videos, pay editors, etc. But only do it if you can afford it. If you want to get a character on here, they'll get here eventually, so you don't have to, but I do really appreciate it. So, what we have today is we have Ogma, submitted by Michael. We have Minerva and Barst from FV3, submitted by Giant Corkscrew. Leo has submitted Daisy, the substitute thief from FV4. Jagan submitted Tilchu from FV4, Jean submitted Femina from FV4, we have Noish, who was submitted by 2 people actually, Inuzama Frost was there first, and then Papa Chapa wanted, I like a Noish, but he didn't see that, Noish was already submitted, but they managed to add it in Azel in time for me to see it, so that's why Azel is here. Stone Piercer submitted Lana, Dermot was submitted by 420 Cheek Slurper, and in case you thought that was the best username I got on Patreon, JesusKun69 submitted Dimna. I went over Papa Chapa's picks already, they're next on my spreadsheet, but that's like no concern to you. Lilio submitted Dew, Thornless Rose submitted Shannan from FV4, and then Noah submitted Shanam from FV5 and says he expects him to be S-tiered, which we'll see about that. Hunter submitted Salem, Gami submitted Robert and Hicks from Thracia. Then we got Mo, who submitted Lithus, Selfina submitted Command List, and G submitted Glade. Or actually, Command List submitted both Selfina and Glade, and then we have Leaf, who somehow didn't end up here, even though I could swear I had him. 1 second, let me fix that. Alright, here we go. So Reed G submitted Leaf, and the Command List submitted Glade. Here we go. If you want me to pronounce your name in a different way, or I borked it somehow, or you just don't like your first name being used, because I generally just take first names and just change your name on Patreon. It's in the settings somewhere. Before I move characters into tier lists, I should probably show this change that I made. So I split the first 3 tiers into plus and minus. So we got S plus, S minus, A plus, A minus, B plus, and B minus. I can't explain exactly how I split these characters. I just kind of picked a point where I said, alright, this is probably, everything above this is probably A plus, everything below this is probably A minus. Feel free to scrutinize it. Feel free to scrutinize any decision I make in the comment section. I read pretty much everything people post. But this is what I felt was right, because these tiers were getting really cluttered. So I felt like it was right to split them up a bit and make a bit of a distinction between characters, because I do feel like, for example, Azel from FV5 is significantly better than the characters in the S- tier. So I felt this was a logical split, but I could see some people around the board as going either way, like Selef and Siryu could move down to S-, for example. I think that is perfectly fair as an argument, and this could also be grounds for like moving some more people up and down within these tiers. But yeah, how about we see how these new people fit into our little scheme right here. So Ogma in FV3 is super strong. I actually like him a lot better than the Shadow Dragon version, and I really like comes down to a couple of things. One of them is FV3 doesn't have reclassing, so Ogma in FV3 is actually one of the few options you have as a mercenary, and you can use like the Armor Slayer and the Worm Slayer, for example. Not a lot of people can do that in FV3. In Shadow Dragon, you could reclass someone else into like a Swordmaster or a hero, and they could do it late game. But now it's more like Ogma's exclusive utility, and it's pretty cool. And also just the fact that like his speed is now more like exclusive to him. For example, Barst in Shadow Dragon is significantly better than Ogma. Because they have roughly the same base stats, absolute base stats. If you reclass them back and forth between their classes, they look roughly the same. Barsts are a little bit better, but now Barst's speed just isn't there in FV3. Instead, Ogma is much faster, so the stats that he gets in the Shadow Dragon are mostly due to the mercenary bases, but now in FV3, they are really his base stats, and you can't really get them anywhere else. and they're pretty good. And he has full move even indoors, so he doesn't have to deal with dismounting. He's good in FV3 book 1 and book 2 as far as I'm concerned. He joins early in both and has the ability to get to one routing pretty quickly. I think he starts off like 1 or 2 points off of one routing in both games, but as long as he grows a couple points of strength, he's really good. I remember his growth rates being pretty good too. I think Ogma is generally like an A tier, just a question of whether he's like A+ or A-. I would say, if I go with my gut, I want to say like A-. We don't have too many FE3 characters to compare him to. Like, I do think Femina is better in FE3 book 2 than Ogma is in FE3 book 2. They join it lawfully at the same time, but the exclusive rescue utility is like, that's something he doesn't just reach. And I don't see any other good FE3 benchmarks unless I'm missing something. So I think A- is fair. I do think he stands out more than the Three Houses characters, so I'm going to put him at the top of A-. I think that is fair for FE3 Ogma. And next we have Minerva, and Minerva joins FE3. It's like kind of halfway through the game in both book 1 and book 2, and you know, she has to dismount, but other than that, she is in a really good class. Like, Wyvern is just an absolutely broken class. There is no Hot Claire in the original FE3. She just has a high weapon level rank, and she can use pretty much every axe she would ever want to. In fact, I'm saying axes, but she actually uses lances in those books. I just realized. I was like, wait a second, Kaga doesn't like axes. Why would Minerva be able to use them? And I realized, wait, she's not actually axe-based in those games. Yeah, she uses lances, and she's still pretty good at those, though. Pretty neat. A lot of people think you have to use her in FE3 book 2 because she's forced into the final chapter, or rather, if you want to recruit literally everyone, then you have to deploy her in the final chapter, and sure, that is true. But even at base, she can be sort of competent in those chapters, and you don't have to really utilize her in fighting in order to get her to the, you know, where she needs to be safely. So I don't think this is a huge point in her favor. It kind of grants her like a free deployment slot in the final chapter if you use her, but honestly, even if you don't train her, she's still like sort of viable in that chapter. And honestly, she's so good that you kind of want to anyway. She's just like, her bases are pretty good. I remember her HP, it's like pretty low. Like the DS games and the original games, they're kind of, the player character at HP is just so low for some reason, so it doesn't really stand out for Minerva per se, but someone you've been training for like all game is probably going to have a little more HP than that. But I remember her strength, speed, and everything else being sufficient, especially for FE3 book 1, where the enemies are kind of whatever. And in book 2, I mean, sure, the enemies are stronger there, but she can still hold her own. And I don't believe that game has dragon pikes. I'm not entirely sure. I know it has worm slayers. But she can't use those if she dismount because her weapon level is that good. So I think she's like fairly solid. I'm going to try to see if I can find Fv12 Minerva. I'm pretty sure it's this one. I think this version of her is like a little better. I don't know if it's like by a whole tier or not. Fv12 Minerva really is a different beast. Really different than Fv11 Minerva 2, because the Hot Claire, I think it kind of changes how I view her character and her utility. But she still has the same Worm Slayer utility. So I'll put her like right above, I guess. But I don't really have any objections moving her a little bit around. Arcanine games are not like my specialty or anything when rating units, so feel free to correct me if I get them wrong, but yeah, I'm pretty happy with Minerva in general. I haven't really finished FE3 book 1, but I remember her base being roughly the same between book 1 and book 2, so yeah, I think she doubles just fine. I think she kills just fine if you want her to. Her growths are good enough. I mean, FE3 book 2 and 1 don't even punish like being promoted for XP gain, so there is no real drawback to trying to raise her. She gains XP like as fast as other people. She's pretty good, just don't miss her village, I guess. Next up is Barst from FE3, and I actually just went over him in my fighter tier list video. Like, that one was posted 2 days ago at the time of recording, and not a lot of people seem to want me to like put him in a different tier, so I'm pretty happy with putting him in like, I don't remember exactly where I put him. I think it was like B or C. His stats are good, but the big problem with Barst in FE3 is that he doesn't promote for some reason. Like, I don't know what Kaga has against axe users. I'm pretty sure he let like almost every class promote in FE3, but not fighters. Like, fuck those fighters. They just don't get the warrior class. Like, it made its debut for player characters in like FE4, and then even in that game they were not very good. And FE3, it's like, all right, cool. We have a fighter. We give him good growth and bases, but we just don't let him promote. Someone did point out that the hand axe actually only weighs 3 or only weighs 9 in FE3, whereas the javelin weighs 20, which is like, okay, thanks, dude. That's like some favoritism, I guess. So that's kind of okay. He does like sort of have competent one-to range, I guess. Still not a great weapon overall. And being weighed down by axes with no way to compensate does kind of suck, but I do remember Barst being like somewhat competent in FE3. He's not in book 2, like they only shoehorned him into a new mystery, but he's only in book 1, so based on his book 1 viability, I would probably put him somewhere in D tier overall. compared to all these mooks. I think he's better than people with no availability whatsoever, but not a whole lot better than them. Like, yeah, this is probably around right for him. I don't know. Next we have Daisy, not from Mario Kart. And she's the substitute for Patty, so if you don't pair Bridget in Gen 1 and FE4, then you just, you get her instead, and it's kind of a letdown. Now, when I've been rating substitutes before, I've been kind of going over something that I think matters with them, is like, there's a huge difference whether you're playing like with 1 or 2 substitute pairs, or whether you're playing like a full substitute playthrough. If you're not playing, if you didn't pair Bridget, but you pair like everyone else, I think she's gonna hold up just fine, but she's not gonna be as useful. But I think if you're playing all substitutes, then she's like super important to your army, which is a little reverse to what goes for the other substitutes, I think. And the reason for that is the lack of inheritance in an all substitute playthrough. So if no one inherits anything, then everyone has to buy all the rings, all the weapons, all the things they want in the pawn shop, and it costs a bunch of money. And they don't inherit much money at all. Their base money is probably like, it's probably not more than like 5,000. For Daisy, I think it's a little more, because the thief class has more money base, if I remember correctly. I remember Dew having a lot of base money, for example, and we're going to go over him later. So if you have a lot of substitutes, then you probably have a lot of people who want money, which makes her stealing utility all the better, because every time she attacks someone, she takes their money. You can give it to other people, which is pretty nice. But if you're playing and like you didn't pair Bridget, but you paired everyone else, then people are generally fine on money. They still want some because like Paragon Ring and everything. But in FE4 Gen 2, it's a lot easier to get going than in Gen 1, because people start with a bunch of inherited items. Like you can inherit, for example, a Life Ring. You can inherit a Paragon Ring if you're Self, all that kind of stuff. So the demand for money is a little lower, but it's still nice to be able to buy Paragon more often, get to promotion quicker. So it's still nice utility, and I think she's roughly as good as Patty is, depending on what kind of playthrough you're doing. So I definitely think she belongs in the same tier as Patty overall, because her utility is better. Of course, her combat is a lot worse. She has no pursuit. She has Miracle. That's like her only skill. She can get through the arena thanks to the Sleep Edge, but even that is like chance based. Like if she gets one-hit KO'd, which is not infrequent in later levels of the arena, it's very hard to get a hit in with the Sleep Edge and actually get to sleep, because that also has like I think it's like I want to say 20 or 30% minus their resistance chance of happening, which can be like very low. But you can try infinite times, so it's a very tedious affair, but you can raise her in the arena. You can also try to make use of Miracle, get her to 1 HP, and then she'll dodge everything that will ever attack her. So those are options, but they're very tedious, and like they're not very turn-heavy investments, but they're very time-heavy investments. Like it costs you real-life time. You could be going out to the beach or, you know, having a snack somewhere, but instead you're forced to train up Daisy in the arena, which kind of sucks. So maybe she should be a tier below Patty. I wouldn't be opposed to that, like putting her like around here somewhere, for example. Like probably better than, like probably worse than these guys by a little bit. The lack of combat really hurts. Also, she doesn't have the option of like having a parent help her out with inheritance. Like you can pass down items to Patty, you know, she can sell those, and then she can use those to give other people money. You can also, for example, pair Holden with Bridget, and that will give Patty access to the hero sword, and that will make her clear the arena a lot faster. Or you can pair Bridget with Lex, give her Paragon, and Daisy is none of those options, so those kind of suck. So I do think a tier gap between them is fair, but the thief utility mostly stays the same. Generally what they will be doing is stealing money, giving it to other units, making them promote faster, and that is still kind of nice, but I think in FE4 Gen 2 it's less useful than in Gen 1. So I'm going to put Dew like a fair bit above them, I'm pretty sure. Next is Tiltu. She's from Gen 1, and I have a huge weakness for Tiltu and the things she went through and how fun she used to use. I put her in my top 8 most fun units to use that are bad or something, like top 8 most bad units that I love to use. I don't remember the title. It's a very old video by me, not very high quality, but a lot of people apparently liked it. I don't know exactly what the appeal was. I mean, I can guess, but I don't exactly know what the appeal was. Not exactly, but I do know the appeal of Tiltu, and that's Wrath. Wrath is just a lot of fun to use in FE4, because unlike in a lot of other games, Wrath is guaranteed to work. Like if you're at half HP or below, you get a crit. Period. You just crit. Player phase, enemy phase, doesn't matter. You always crit. And Tiltu has a lot of base attacking power because she can use her Thoron Tome at base, and that has 20 might on itself. She hits an enemy resistance, her magic is okay, so generally she's going to one-shot things with Wrath. Not everything, but most of the things. In the arena, Wrath is almost like a free whip button. If she loses, she comes down to 1 HP, and then from there it's just a matter of hitting once or twice to get through, and then she'll clear the arena. It's a little luck-based. Sometimes it kind of sucks that she can only use Thunder Tomes at base, like she cannot use Wind until she promotes, and that means she'll have Weapon Triangle disadvantage sometimes. That can kind of stink against Winged Mages. Chapter 4 is not very kind to her, but it's not impossible to train her. It's just like very, very tedious. And there's not a whole lot of reward to it. Like in a ranked run, it's nice that you can promote her at level 20 and then use staffs to get to level 30. But outside of that, I've always found training her kind of pointless. It's like, alright, you got a 5 to 6 move unit that can use magic. Cool. Nothing I already don't have access to. Wrath is pretty hard to use on her on the actual battlefield. It's fun in her joining area because you can kind of play around with like, do you heal her with Claude or not? Do you put her in range of a pirate or not? Do you want to crit one to death or just two-shot them? How do you get most XP out of it? How do you make sure she survives? And I think that kind of stuff is like interesting. It's one of the most interesting join situations in FV4, and I wish it'd have more situations like that. Most of FV4 is just like, alright, move all your units out of the castle one at a time, and I just keep on going until you like killed all the enemies nearby. Whereas situations like Tiltus and like Leafs in Chapter 7, those are interesting to me, and FV4 doesn't have a whole lot of them. I wish there were more of those. And all those things combined, plus her super amazing design, makes me really like Tiltu, but I don't think she's very good. In fact, I think she has a lot of issues. I'm kind of decided, I noticed like Tinny is around this tier, and I think Tinny is relatively worse because FV4 Gen 2, the standards for combat are even higher than for like Tiltus in Gen 1. Tiltus joins around a time where most of the units will be promoting, so she still doesn't look very good. But I think she's relatively a little bit better than Tinny, but not by much. I might just put her next to her daughter, you know, just to have them together like that. That's kind of cool. This does seem like the right tier for her overall, so I'm going to keep her in D tier overall. I'm not opposed to splitting more tiers, by the way, in case you were wondering. I might split the C tier as well. There's a lot of people in here. I might even split this B- tier even further, because I feel like a lot of people end up in here anyway. But we'll see about that. For now, this is what I'm going with. I did promise the S tier split a long time ago, so I felt like it was way overdue, and I decided to do the other tiers, but yeah, we'll get to that when we get to that. But I don't think there's any need to split this one yet, for example. It's not that many people in there. We'll see when the time comes. Next up is Femina from FV4. I did the Pegasus Knight tier list a long time ago, and I think I ended up putting her at like the bottom of all the tier lists, or all the Pegasus Knights. I know Tsubaki might end up being worse in like Revelations, but other than that, I don't know who else is going to be worse. The big problem with substitutes in FV4 for me is that they're boring. I get really bored when playing with FV4 substitutes, and Femina I think is the primary example of a boring substitute, because you just get a fee that's boring. You just get a fee with no pursuit, just added, which is a super superfluous skill on a Pegasus Knight, because I mean, not only does it not let them double reliably, but after promotion you get added anyway. So it's like, cool, I have this thing I would already get anyway. Could I just get like anything else? Like even if it's not pursuit, even if it's like critical or a cost or something, anything besides that would have been cool. And then the stats is just kind of bleh. And if you're gonna be a flyer, why would you pick FV4? Like, not saying Femina had any agency in picking what game she was gonna be in, but damn, she's just mediocre. Like, not being able to make use of roads is so annoying in FV4. It really hurts them quite a lot. And then being weak to bows is just annoying too. There's no way to compensate for it. Like, at least Fee has the option to have Alec as her dad and then have Nihil. It's not a great option, but it is there. And Femina is just like, alright, I'm gonna die to bows, goodbye. And her strength is mediocre. Her speed, I mean, it would be nice if she could double attack, but she doesn't have pursuit, so it doesn't even matter. It's just like nice avoid, I guess. And no real like compensating factors. Probably still an okay substitute, I guess, but no real niches or anything. At least someone like Dimna, for example, gets like a huge strength boost. And I already talked before about how like Linde, for example, is super more interesting because of Wrath and Paragon. And she just gets nothing that's interesting to her. It's just a flyer in FV4 in a game where there are some spots where flying over mountains and stuff is nice to get the villages early, but it's not super crucial. And if she does that, it usually takes her multiple turns to get to, which means she doesn't really get involved in combat of any kind. So in the end, it's like you get some utility, but you really take out combat potential and like potential XP for her. So it tends to make her even worse long term. Staves after promotion is kind of nice, I guess, but overall, I think we got another D tier on our hands here, unfortunately. Probably better than these, because at least she can keep up or do stuff, unlike the mages here. So I do think she's worse than SOVS. She might actually move up at some point, SOVS. I'm kind of liking her a little bit more as I'm playing through SOV. But that is the advantage of these tier lists, is especially when I'm rating characters multiple times, is I get to move them around a little bit, or move them on one tier list, or re-rate them a little bit. So yeah, for now, I think a better substitute here is nice. I'm pretty sure, I don't remember which Gordon this is, but yeah, fair enough. Man, I really should distinguish more between FV11 and FV12 portraits, somehow. It would be really cool. Alright, so we got the Cav Duo from FV4. I remember in the last FV4 Let's Play I participated in, I rated them both, I think 3 stars, maybe 4 stars, I don't remember, probably 3. In theory, they have everything you want out of a Cavalier or a unit in Fv4. Is they join early, they have swords, they have a mount, and then in Alex's case they have pursuit. So they really should be rated pretty highly. Of course, the big problem with Noish, because as we start with him, is he doesn't have pursuit. He just has a cost and critical, which means he's not reliable one rounding. He can do it if you RNG abuse or if you just get lucky, but he usually won't. And most of the time, at least early on, he won't. You do get some tools later on to make it happen. You give him the Brave Sword, and with his high strength, he can two-shot enemies most of the time. I say most of the time, I mean like non-armored units, people like mages and stuff like that. That can work. Alec, his big problem is he can double, but he doesn't two-shot stuff. So it's easier to make Noish kill stuff with like the Pursuit Ring or the Brave Sword than it is to make Alec kill stuff. I guess he can quadruple stuff with the Brave Sword. That usually works unless it's an armored unit. So I guess that there's that. But yeah, Noish, huge strength, pretty good defense actually, decent enough bulk. Weapon Triangle over in first chapters honestly saves him from being kind of bad, I think. Like, don't get me wrong, he's nice to have, but the lack of doubling is really annoying. And the Weapon Triangle makes him like durable at least. Like enemies have like 30 hit on him, so and they like 2 or 3 hit KO, and mostly 3 hit KO. So he's pretty durable in that aspect. Once that goes away in Chapter 2, these guys become a lot less viable. They can buy like Iron Lances or Steel Lances. Well, no, not Steel Lances, they have Sea Lances. But they can buy Iron Lances, and they can still double most enemy Cavaliers, like the Nodion Cavs, for example. But they lose a lot of durability from like not having Weapon Triangle. They lose a lot of attack speed from the Iron Lances, and then they just lose 20% Weapon Triangle. And as a result, they just become like, you attack a couple of times with them and then they need healing. And your healing is generally far away in Chapter 2. And generally you want to heal like Quan or Sigurd instead, and that's usually where they kind of fall off for me, become less useful. But their early utility is nice, and if you put some resources into them, they can work. I made them both part of like a Pitfalls video, except it was more like a precursor to Waifu, where for example, I talked about Alec being able to use the Light Brand as a Paladin promotion. He does need like a point or 2 of magic growth to actually two-shot enemies, which is hard to get sometimes. He will get like 1 on average before promotion, and he gets like +5 magic on promotion, and he can use a magic ring to two-shot stuff. But I think he needs like another point of magic somewhere to actually two-shot stuff, which is unfortunate. And there are better candidates for Light Brand, as we'll see later. So it's not super great. I'm not super hyped on them anymore, but I still think they're decent. I still think they're like B- tier at the very least, because they have mounts. So we'll just move them up here for now. Go up a little more. I would say maybe they move up even further. They should be in the same tier as Lex, I feel like. I feel like Lex is generally getting overrated a little bit, while these guys get underrated. So I'm gonna move him up into B+ tier actually, but not too far up. Lex does feel a little better overall because of his long-term viability, but he's kind of bleh in Prologue in Chapter 1, so maybe not too far. I do think they're worse than Leon overall, better than Ike though. So yeah, this is what it feels like. Maybe these guys are in the wrong spots, I don't know. As for which one of these is better, I do feel like Alec is better because Pursuit is just so important. And the thing that fixes Noish is like Brave Sword, which also works for Alec. He can't really make use of the Pursuit Ring because he already has Pursuit, but I still feel like it's easier to make Alec good than Noish. And Alec also does more damage early on, because doubling with his Iron is generally, I think it does like about as much damage, if not more, than Noish. But you can give Alec a Steel Sword or a Slim Sword, and he'll just out-damage Noish generally. So he has more opportunities to set up kills for others, I feel like. Okay, next we have Azel, still from Fv4 Prologue, but we're slowly creeping into that Gen 2, well, except for Dew. Anyway, Azel, he joins early. That's nice, and that's really necessary because he's got 19 levels to go. Or actually, it's more like, no, it's a little less levels. I remember him not being level 1, but I'm gonna look it up now because now I feel stupid. Yeah, no, he's level 1. Shucks, that sucks because he joins with 5 move, and when he promotes, he gets a horse, so he goes up to 8 move. That would be really good to have. I would love to have that much move, but we have 5. It kind of sucks. I'm actually really worried right now if he has actually has that much move. Okay, no, he gets 9 move. All right, there we go. 9 move. 9 move on Azel. So 9 move is super good. 5 move is super bad because when you have 5 move, you can fight in the prologue and kill a couple bandits, and then you're kind of stuck on an island. You have to walk all the way to the next castle while everyone else has a horse. Like literally everyone else in prologue has a horse except for Arden, and you don't want to be compared to Arden, but you have the same move, so you're probably going to be compared to Arden. And he won rounds. That's like super good. People always bitch about like fire magic not being like lighter than it is. It's like 12 weight, which sucks. But Azel still doubles axe users, so it doesn't really hurt him very much. And by the time that you face faster enemies, like, you know, Chapter 2, you can buy Thunder. So I don't think this is a big issue for Azel. And sure, it cuts into his Avoid, but his Avoid is never reliable anyway until like promotion and like he gets like Weapon Triangle. but I don't think it's a big deal overall for Azel's utility. What really hurts him is just a low base level, lack of movement. Now, I still used Azel in my last Fv4 Iron Man, and I actually found it not too hard to get him promoted by Chapter 4, which is when most units should promote anyway. But it does take some hand-holding. He just needs to get like at least 1 gold donation or a bunch of villages to afford the Paragon ring at some point. He has trouble clearing the arena. The big benchmark for him to clear is like that Myrmidon that usually shows up somewhere. Those usually double him and kill him. Even if he uses the Thunder Tome, like he needs wind to be faster than those, and even then, it's not always gonna happen because his speed base and growth are like acceptable, but you know it's hard to compete with swords being as light as they are. And Myrmidon's speed base is pretty high too, so it can be tricky to get past the Myrmidon. If he can get there, which you know he needs to get lucky for, but it can happen over the course of a chapter, then he's usually okay. He can beat an Armor Knight usually, or like any kind of mounted enemy. Struggles a little bit with like enemies with hero weapons. Mostly talking arena here, by the way, but those aren't very common in Gen 1 until much later when he's actually promoted. So he can get through if he gets very lucky, but if he doesn't get through, it really cuts into his XP gain, and that sucks because on the field he's also not getting much XP. Not in Chapter 2, for example, where everyone is just like way ahead of him and gotta kill enemies way before he gets there. And even when he does get to the action, the problem is also like his durability is crap. He takes 1 hit, maybe 2, before he just needs to retreat and die or get healed, because he just doesn't get anything done that way. He can't really fight on enemy phase is the main point I'm making here. He just kind of sucks at it. When he promotes though, which you can eventually get him to in Chapter 4, it doesn't take too much investment. Turn-wise, it takes a lot of hand-holding. When he does get there, he gets like swords, which doesn't sound like a big deal for someone focused on magic, but I actually like using the light brand with him. I didn't realize how good it would be until I tried it out. But the light brand gives him advantage over wind mages. And the thing about the light brand is, it seems kind of weird giving a really strong weapon like that to a magic user. Because, you know, wouldn't you want someone like Sigurd to have one to range, or, you know, Alec like I talked about before, or even Beowulf, or Lachesis, I don't know. Why would you give it to Azel? Because if they attack him at 1 range, he's going to use his garbage strength to attack, and that sucks. And it does, but a lot of enemies I find attack him at 2 range anyway, or you can set it up to where they do. And then he's actually like really good against Chapter 4 wind mages. He's able to double them, he has enough speed to double that. And he gets weapon triangles, so if you use like avoid stacking with like a Forest or Charm from Charisma, I mean Lachesis, or Sigurd's Leadership, he's actually pretty reliable at taking him out on enemy phase, and he can build up kills in light brand for someone else. He doesn't have to keep the thing all the way, but it is a really nice weapon on him, and sometimes he'll get attacked up close, but it doesn't happen very often, and thanks to his mount, it's pretty easy to position him in a way where he doesn't get attacked. Enemy density in Chapter 4 is super low, and you'll be in a group with like huge, strong other mounted units. You can dance someone with Sylvia to get 4 more attacks in, so generally I don't find this to be a big issue. But the climb to get there is very annoying. Like that babying 5-move unit with low durability is super annoying. It lasts for most of Gen 1. Like if you think about it, if you count the prologue as 1 chapter, it lasts for 4 chapters, then he promotes and he's good for 2. So I don't think that puts him any higher than C tier. The question is, of course, where exactly it puts him in C tier. I'm gonna get like vibes of around here somewhere, around the middle. And yet I would put him about 11, because 11 doesn't have a mount at all, whereas at least Azel, I feel like Azel is more useful once he promotes compared to Lewin. And yeah, that includes Horseheady, or rather Forceheady. 11 is not Horseheady. If it was Horseheady, he'd be way up there. But he's just Horseheady. Or Holseheady. There we go. Azel is still, I think, in an LTC context, I think Azel is better than Lewin, and I think if you really weigh everything against everything, I think Azel is more useful than Lewin. Most people will probably find Lewin easier to use, and he is easier to use for beginners. They are in the same tier after all, and Lewin does have like much better combat in the arena, but you know, Lewin doesn't actually one-on enemies. I think a lot of people don't realize this sometimes, but Lewin is actually one-on enemies reliably. He's just like Noah, he doesn't have pursuit, he just has a cost, or he has a depth and critical, so he doesn't always run around stuff. Azel, when he does get to an enemy, he will run around them generally. With fire or thunder, or even like Elwind, which you can use after promotion, or Lightbrand, he will run around stuff. Lewin, even when he gets whole SETI, he might not one around something. It depends on whether he one-shots. He one-shots a lot of generic enemies, but not like bosses. So keep that in mind as you're like typing an angry comment about how Azel has been rated over Lewin. Because it seems strange, but I think it makes a bit of sense. Lewin also is not available for the majority of the time where Azel is, so that also counts in Azel's favor. Alright, next on the list we have a pretty interesting unit in Lana from Generation 2, Ideen's daughter. Now Lana can be very, very samey, or she can be majorly different from every other pairing. And most pairings, I think what generally happens is you kind of prioritize Lester's combat, and you just accept that Lana is just going to be a healer. Slightly better than Ideen, but with Pursuit and maybe a couple of other random skills. Like if Midir's her dad most of the time, then she'll have a cost, and it's useless until she promotes. And even after she promotes, it's really not that useful. Because High Priests just aren't all that great at combat to begin with. They have like C ranks and everything, every weapon type. So she's going to use like a basic Fire or Wind Tome or something in the arena. It's nice to get her promoted because it will get her arena money to buy the expensive staves, but other than that, it really doesn't matter very much. But if you have Claude as her dad, sure, you totally nerf Lester, but Lana becomes a very, very powerful healer. You can have her inherit Fortify, also known as Reserve in the old patch, every kind of A rank staff, because normally she only has B rank staffs, but with the A rank she can use Fortify, and she can inherit the Rescue that Claude gives to Ideen in Chapter 5. And that lets you like teleport people around. And the Rescue Staff is the only turn-saving staff you have in FE4 besides like returning people to home castles and warping them between castles. But Return actually lets you gain tiles, so for LTCs and stuff, it's actually pretty important to get Rescue on Lana. And you can get the Rescue Staff with another pairing with Azel Ideen. You'll get the Rescue Staff earlier in Chapter 4 instead of Chapter 5, but then Lana cannot inherit it because she'll have B rank staff. She needs Claude's boost from his Holy Blood to get A rank, so that's the only way to get Rescue Staff for all of Generation 2, and that's a very significant change. But that pairing comes at the cost of Lester, and Azel Lana also is like nice, but not as good as like, or rather Lester isn't as good in that pairing either, because sure, Azel gives them both Pursuit, but yeah, the strength growth is kind of cringe. It's pretty low strength for Lester that way. Lester's still like usable kind of, but it really is a big pain in the butt. So you kind of have to choose between making her the best she could possibly be and making Lester as good as he could possibly be, because Lester, like Midir Lester is pretty good. Just having the hero bow available, having Pursuit plus a cost is super nice. Even Jamka Lester with Adept instead, and then the pairing lets them like get the hero bow, and then you can give him a Pursuit ring if you want to and still have like a better kind of Lester. But otherwise, yeah, I kind of have to choose between the two of them, and it kind of sucks. I've never really played much with Claude Lana, but I've seen her work in LTCs and stuff, and it's pretty interesting. And if you're really into like speedrunning and stuff, you can do the rescue glitch, where if you have someone guard the main castle, use the rescue staff on them, they get to move like infinitely around the map. It's really fun to play around with. It's about as much fun as the mine glitch in the GBA FE. So depending on which pairing you do, Lana can be like, I feel like the generic healer version of her is like a C, B tier, like a kind of an okay unit, but not that great. And then the Claude version and well, mostly just the Claude version. The Azel version isn't that much better, but the Claude version is like nice. I would say she's like, honestly, like an A unit up here, but I'm not going to rate her according to her best pairing because Lester is also so impacted by it. So I kind of gotta take that into account somehow. So I think that ends her up in like the top of B plus, or the top of B minus, and then the lower ends of B plus, I think. And I think that might even be generous. Let's see, is any other FE4 bros around here? I guess Sed. I think Sed is overall more consistent in FE4 than Lana is. But the Cloud version is much better than any kind of version of Sed. So I do want to give some credit for that, but maybe not too much. So how about we put her here for now and call it a day? I think that is fair. I wouldn't put her much higher than that. Kids are always hard to rate, and within genealogy, especially when we have such a conflict of interest between two kids, it's kind of weird. Most of the time, I think for most people, she'll be more like a C rank unit, but I want to give some credit to the Cloud version here because Rescue and Fortify is really good. Then we have Dermot, Lacus' son. Alright, let's get it out of the way. Azel Dermot is garbage. I've been ranting about this for like all of my FE4 Iron Man. I made the pairing because the chat voted on it to spite me. I hate that pairing so much. So normally what happens with Dermot is generally people will pair Beowulf with Lacus. That's by far the most common pairing, and I think by far the best one. Beowulf is like a copy of Dermot, like a slightly worse version. You pass down B rank swords if you don't promote Beowulf. You can pass down A ranks if you want to. If you promote Beowulf, you get Pursuit, you get a cost, and Lacus' Holy Blood makes his strength like really good. And until promotion, I always found Dermot a little underwhelming in like the speed and defense and HP department. I found him kind of frail. I don't know what it is, but it just feels like he never dodges anything. I never use phrasing like this because it feels like personal experience, but it has to be like either his lackluster luck or some other kind of weird flaw about him, but he doesn't seem too good. He still doubles most of the enemies because swords are just that light, and most enemies use heavier weapons, so he'll double just fine, but I never find him too impressive. He has Charm thanks to Lacus, that's super good too. Great skill to have from both him and Nana to increase your reliability a little bit. Doesn't work on himself, unfortunately, but you can still give him leadership if you want to. So that's cool. And then there's people who say like, alright, you know what, I could have this Dermot with like really good strength growth, and it gets his strength up like real high, real fast. Or I could say, you know, that strength is good enough, I'm going to nerf it with Azel as a dad, and still give him pursuit, but then we're going to use magic swords with him. And I'm like, dude, that's cringe, because his magic base is still garbage, even with Azel as a dad. You have to give him a magic sword, and even then I think he has trouble one-darting. I remember doing it, I don't remember exactly how much damage he did. I think he needed the magic ring so he can one-dart with a magic sword. And then guess what, it doesn't work on enemy phase. You just get like one range at enemy phase, and whenever you're using a magic sword on enemy phase with a lower strength Dermot, you're doing less damage. You're probably not one-darting anything, and it sucks. It really fucking sucks. It also doesn't work in the arena. You can't use your magical sword at range in the arena, so once again, your Dermot is worse than you could possibly be. And then Azel also gives him worse strength and worse defense. He's gonna cap like strength in the end though, because like as this is Holy Blood is just that good, but you slow down his growth, and I really hate that. I really hate having less strength than I could. And after promotion, no matter what you do, he's going to be fine, because the promotion that he gets to, I think it's called Forest Knight or Free Knight, he gets like +9 skill and speed, and he gets adept, so he gets like a 40 to 50% chance to just attack again, which is insanely good. So at that point, any issue will be fixed, and it doesn't matter what you pair him with. But I really think to get him the best start possible, Beowulf is the best dad for him. So overall, I think Dermot is one of the best units in Gen 2. I don't like the kids much in general when it comes to like tiering them and like getting them high on a tier list, because I feel like most of them are kind of irrelevant, they kind of samey. But I think Dermot is one of the exceptions. Dermot is really strong. I want to rank him like a little bit above Nana for his availability edge. Although Nana has staff utility, so that's pretty good too. Like return and all this kind of stuff are kind of good. So maybe he should be below his sister a little bit. Depends on whether you value like the Chapter 6 utility more, or you know, staff utility. I'm kind of tempted to say Nana actually has the edge here in FE4, thinking about it a little more. So I'm gonna put him like a little bit below her. I don't know if he should be next to her or not. I'm gonna put him next to her for now. I can't really think of a reason why Hector would be better than Dermot, but worse than Nana. I could see it happen, but you know, cross-game comparisons always tough, which is why we're making this huge tier list that is all about cross-game comparisons. But this feels about right, and I mean, you gotta have people next to their sister, right? Alright, and then we have Dimna, substitute for Lester, who I just kind of discussed. Dimna is like if you take like a pretty mediocre to bad Meteor pairing, and then that's kind of what you get with Dimna. A couple things about Dimna. The first one that I think most people will remember if they ever used him is he has a secret confrontation. Almost every substitute has one. I think every substitute has one. He is one of the best ones. I think if he visits, I want to say it's Isaac or Safara Castle. It's the bottom castle in Chapter 6. Some girl talks to him and gives him like +5 strength, and you know, that's pretty good. It still doesn't make his strength as good as, you know, someone like Selef or Oifi or whatever. It's better than most Meteor pairings for a while, but I remember his growth overall being worse than, let's say, I said Meteor, but I meant Lester, like Meteor Lester basically. Lester with Meteor as a dad. Generally it's going to be worse. The +5 strength, it lasts a little bit, but it doesn't like make him one round every enemy ever or anything. And then substitutes, they have no inheritance, so he's going to have to buy the hero's bow or kill the guy that has it, which is going to be tough because I think it's a general, so good luck with that one. Killer bow doesn't work as well on him as it would on someone with like a cost as a skill, for example. He really only has pursuit, and that's unfortunate. Another thing I remember about Dimna that really irritated me is, and that might be personal experience, but I remember him fighting a Dark Mage in Chapter 7 and just getting one shot because his HP was too low. So if you have Ideen paired with someone, Lester will probably have enough HP to survive one hit at least. Dimna's like, no, I'm gonna die in one hit, see you later. So that sucks. Overall, kind of a boring substitute. There are more interesting ones, but I do like the strength combo, and I like that at least they gave him like a mount and pursuit and bows. He's not the worst one, but you know, just not very spectacular. I'm gonna put him, he's definitely better than Femina, for example. Better than Linde even. Like the class and pursuit is overall like pretty nice still. So B-, B+ somewhere. I'm trying to see if there's any similar units. Definitely worse than Dermot, for example. I would say by a whole tier. Worse than Meteor, relatively speaking, I think. So definitely a B- for me. Around here seems alright. Yeah, around Noah's level seems about right, I think. About Kyle's level, yeah, that seems about right. Maybe a little lower than that. I really don't think this unit is very good, but he's like usable at least. It's one of the like, if you're stuck with substitutes, you'll like this one the most, but I still really hate the lack of inheritance and everything. It's really, really annoying to work with, but you know, it's workable. It's workable. And And then we have the savior of those without money like substitutes, except he's in Gen 1. It's Du, the thief. I rated him in the Fv4 Let's Play I did with Mangs. I rated him really highly. I gave him like 5 stars, and I think in hindsight that was pretty justified for ranked runs, because giving other people Paragon effectively is good. So the way Du works is kind of like how Daisy works. You attack with her, or with him. It's a guy. He has a ponytail, but it's a guy. You attack with him, he takes their money, and you can give that money to anyone. Normally, units can only exchange money with their lovers, but Du's like, nope, I'll give money to anyone. And it's pretty good. Now, his combat at base is, of course, horrendous. I actually made like a pretty elaborate Reddit post about Du today, coincidentally enough. And the big problem with Du is just everything that has to do with combat. His base stats are like garbage, single digit, no holy blood on his growth or anything. Still pretty good growths, but overall not that great by Fv4 standards, like 40% in most areas that matter. No pursuit. C rank sword is really bad. It means you cannot use the hero sword. You cannot use like the thunder sword for range chipping. You can use the light brand because it's C rank. That's pretty nice, but no high rank swords in general. And yeah, that's pretty bad. So he's like fairly durable against enemy axe users, but once you get to chapter 2, he's just gonna die in 2 hits to almost everything with good hit rates. So exposing him on enemy phase is generally not a good idea. So what you'll generally do is the low effort way to use Du is to have him tag along with your main army and try to get steals whenever you can. Whenever you're like killing everything in that area anyway, to make sure he's safe, or like kill everything with one enemy, because you can take 1 hit and then you get 1 steal in and then you're probably good. But it's pretty tough to do. It's not easy. And I'm raising him for combat. There's not a whole lot of opportunities for him to kill anything because he does so little damage. Like we're talking like 5 damage maybe if you're lucky, and I'm like 1 damage against armor because the minimum is 5. It's 1 damage. So that's pretty hard to deal with. What he does have though is bargain, which lets him buy items for half price, and he still sells them for half price. So you can effectively borrow items from the pawn shop with him at no cost whatsoever. So you can use that to cheese the arena a bit. You can use it to buy the Paragon ring to get double experience, or you can use something like a power ring to do more damage, a speed ring to get more avoid, or maybe outspeed an enemy Myrmidon. All that stuff. Skill ring for more accuracy. There's no sleep edge cheese in Gen 1. There's no miracle ring that you can buy to like almost guarantee a win. But there's still plenty of ways to cheese the arena. And if you can get into promotion by chapter 4, which is more doable than I make it sound, because I mean it takes a lot of hand holding, a lot of long arena fights, but it's definitely doable. If you get him to promote by chapter 4, he actually gets a really good promotion bonus. He gets +1 move, but he has more move to begin with, so he has 7 move. He gets A rank swords instead of C, so it's a huge improvement. He can use silver swords, hero swords, any kind of weapon you want really, and gets pursuit as well. And a pretty good bonus. I think he gets like 5 strength or something. He's got a pretty good promotion bonus. So once you get him to rogue, he's pretty golden. He can still steal from you after that, but you'll probably be able to clear arenas and give more gold to people. So for ranked runs, his distribution of like Paragon basically to people, give him money to buy the Paragon ring temporarily and clear the arena with it, is super valuable. In a normal playthrough, it's not as good, so I think he's at least as good as Paddy, a little better, because as I said, I value giving gold out more in Gen 1 than in Gen 2, because people need to build their finances up a little bit. I actually think he's a better thief than most of these people in here. For ranked run, I would put him like somewhere up here, but most people don't play ranked, so I'm going to put him a little bit lower. I would say the A minus tier, like about Lacaz's level is honestly fair. I think this is a fair tier for Du, maybe a little lower. I'm kind of taking the ranked runs into account, but I'm also like taking other runs into account, but the thief utility is still pretty good. Okay, our next meme is Shannan from Fv4, last Fv4 unit, and boy, this guy is super powerful. I like this guy. He died in my Iron Man somehow, but for most people that's not going to happen because his stat bonus is so good. So already a base, he has like pretty good strength, enough to 2-shot stuff with like a steel blade, and then enough speed to double everything out there. I don't remember his speed base offhand, but it's like 20 something. And then he gets the Balmung, and he gets +20 speed and +10 skill and a 30 might weapon, and only he can use it. And people are like, wow, he relies on Balmung. And I'm like, he can use the Balmung. That's super good. It's a super good weapon. It will often one-shot enemy mages and some other generic enemy types, often 2-shot. And then his skills, he's got Pursuit, he's got Astra, he's got Adept, and you know, there is just no way any enemy without Nihil is going to survive a round of combat with this guy. Like, there is so many opportunities for him to attack again, and most of the time they're going to die in 1 or 2 hits anyway. But then he has like insane proc rates of Adept. Like, he's like 70% Adept rate sometimes. That might be an exaggeration, but it probably isn't by much. Like, at least 60% because of the +20 bonus for Adept. So much damage. The problem I had in my Iron Man is he joins in the middle of a bunch of enemy Dark Mages, and if he gets hit often enough by like a 16% hit rate with 1RN, then he just dies, and there's not much you can do. There's no healer nearby or anything. You just kind of have to hope that he dodges often enough, and that really fucking sucks. So that's a bit of a problem. The other problem, of course, is that he's not mounted, so he can't keep up with Selef or Eris or Horse Seti or any of those things, so he falls behind, but he makes a pretty good, you know, rear guard, I guess. You can like walk up to some place and kill everything in there if you need him to. He's pretty good in Melgun as like a safe option to kill a bunch of enemies safely. If you can take your time, Shannan's going to be one of your best units, if not your best unit. He's super good. At base level, he's really good even in the final chapter. Like, you don't even have to train him. If you need someone to guard a castle against the like 3-headed dragon attack you face later on, Shannan is not even going to get attacked. Enemies will just ignore him. He has too much avoid. So he's like perfect for that kind of stuff. So if you're not in a hurry, Shannan is really good. If you're in a hurry, Shannan's not that great. And we're kind of in a hurry for the tier list. I'm not assuming like LTC, but it's really not that great at fighting. So for most players, I would say Shannan is like still like an A+ unit. I'm gonna dock some points for being a mount, but it is Fe4 though, so maybe you shouldn't be above like Arthur. I'm gonna rank him around Arthur because, you know, Horse Seti and Shannan, they're both pretty good, but they're held back by their lack of a mount, at least for him in tier 1. Once he promotes, he's going to be better. He's never going to be improving with a horse, which is why I'm putting him a little bit below. But, you know, at base level, he's a little more mobile, and he's got a little bit more utility. I could move him down a little bit further, like this, but I don't think there's too much of a difference between these two. Once he promotes, he is much better, sure. But it takes him, like, I would say he usually wouldn't promote until chapter 8, maybe chapter 9. Usually chapter 9, I think. So that's a lot of ways for Shannan to like rack up points compared to him as well. So I'm not going to put him too far apart. Alright, almost indistinguishable from our last entry, we have Shanam from Fire Emblem 5, Thracia 776. You know, basically the same unit, you know, Sword Master, pre-promoted, joins a little past halfway the game, maybe a little over that. Base stats, not a whole lot of double digits there. He's got like 20-something HP, and nothing else really going for him. Yeah, Shanam is really freaking horrible. I don't know why you want me to put him on a tier list, but here we go. The only thing that sets Shanam apart from other units with any kind of better bases, like this guy has like Shiva level bases, but like 10 chapters later, and as a promoted unit, it's stupid how bad he is. And he's only recruitable in the B route, which is one of the reasons why people want to go A route instead, because that route has much better characters. His only distinguishing feature is the bargain skill. If he visits the shop, he can buy items for half price. Now, this is already past the point in the game where you need to buy anything in Thracia, really, if you're playing like somewhat efficiently. There's not really a lot of like good shops. Like, you don't really buy weapons too much in Thracia to begin with. Mostly you just get them by capturing, or just from your recruitable units using personal weapons and stuff like that, and then hammering them rather than buying them. The one use that I can think of for his bargain skill is buying S-strings in like the Sias chapter late in the game. If you didn't get enough from like chapter 14 or 14X, then you can get a couple extra S-strings there for late game, which can be useful, admittedly. And buying stat boosters in the secret shop if you get the member card from chapter 18, which most people don't because it's so tedious. Like, people already have trouble recruiting Xavier in that chapter. How are you supposed to also get the member card? That takes hours and hours to get for me, and I played Thracia like way too many times. So really, there isn't a good purpose for Shanam. His combat is terrible. It's horrible. I always kill him by accident because he weighs himself down with his Iron Blade at base. Well, I don't always kill him by accident, but I've had it happen before. It's like, alright, I'll just put Homer in his range because Homer recruits him. Have Shanam come at him as an enemy, and Homer just like one-armed the guy. He wasn't even like trained or anything. He's so freaking awful. Definitely a big F if I ever saw one. The question is, where in F does he exactly belong? I'm gonna put him like, I don't even think Bargain deserves much credit, as you can probably tell. So I'm gonna put him like right here. Maybe even the worst unit so far, honestly. I mean S tier. I mean, obviously he belongs here. Obviously. Next is Salem. Quite a bit of a better unit. You know, they both look kind of sleepy, kind of grumpy, but Salem is much more woke than you might think. The first dark magic user that was playable in the series. Pretty cool, distinguishable fact like there. I don't know what's up with the word distinguishable today. I took a break since my last recording, and now it's like super hot outside, so it's hard to concentrate. Anyway, Salem, he joins with C staves. Promoting him gives him B staves, so just a couple chapters of staff XP, he'll have A staves by the mid game. He's gonna be your second warper probably, behind Safi. He's going to get there before Lanoan, and he's going to have it before Sarah joins. Maybe Sleuth will beat him to the punch by joining, but other than that, there's not really going to be any other A-rank staff users by the time he's around. Tina's definitely not beating him to the punch. And that's nice, because a lot of the mid-game chapters, especially the Red Split chapters, are really heavy on the warp requirements, so having more than one warper around is pretty good. But you can also use like every other staff in Thracia, like Rescue and Magic Up and Torch and Sleep and Silence, and there's another really good one. I can't come up with it. Rewarp is pretty good. All those are like really nice. Restore, that's a pretty big one. So whether you're playing casually or just really fast, Salem is going to be absolutely crucial in your playthrough. Definitely an A tier unit if I ever saw one. For the first bit that he's around, it's going to be mostly self-improvement. I'm not going to lie about this. It's mostly going to be like, okay, I would like to physics someone, and I already have Safi to do it, but Safi doesn't need staff rank anymore, so I'm going to use Salem instead. But if I didn't have Salem, I would just use Safi, and the utility will be mostly the same. So generally you don't need his contributions, but he can use it, you can contribute, and if Safi's on the bench due to fatigue or something, he can still like do things that she couldn't. But it will take a little bit before he can get to B or A staff. That does take a little bit. So I'm at the bottom of A+ right now. I think he's actually a little bit better than that. I would say he's about I would say he's better than Ephraim and Alm and Friends. Better than Fiora. Shanna, I'm not sure about. Yeah, I'm gonna put him here for now. I really like his utility. And I'm also going to move her over Fiora, because we're slowly moving Fiora down a little bit. So there you have it. A+ Salem. Next we have Robert, or Roberto, also from Thracia. One of the few units in Thracia I would not recommend you training your first playthrough. Not that it's difficult, it's just like very tedious. It's one of those characters that joins at like chapter, I want to say 8 or 9. I think, yeah, it's 9. He joins with what I like to call the Leinster Scrub Squad. Joins along with Selfina and Elva and Kine, and they're not great. They have good growths, but they have pretty bad bases and mostly bad weapon ranks. Like Robert has E-bows, which is yuck. And then he has a movement star and he has a mount, but if you're going to have a mount, Thrace is like one of the worst games to have a mount in, especially at that point where you're kind of past the point where you're going to have a lot of combat in outdoor chapters. And indoors, you don't really get to take advantage of a mount because you got a dismount. So the one good thing, I guess, is that he keeps his main weapon indoors, so he can keep using those E-rank bows there. I guess that's alright. If you want to train him, I would recommend that like quarter chapter. 11x, that's like pretty good to get him some levels on like the mages and stuff. You can give him like, I don't think you get a magic up at that point. I think you do actually. So you can give him magic up and then have him kill a bunch of javelin soldiers and mages and archers pretty freely. It's what I usually use to train Ronan, but if you want to train like a different bow user every once in a while, I would definitely recommend Robert. So Robert's, I would say is about as good as Carrion is really. I've heard rumors that I misplaced Carrion, which, you know, fine, but he's the top of V tier. I could put him like here if you want me to instead. And in that case, I'm going to put Robert like here as well. I think he's trainable in Thracia because that game is like sort of balanced in a way you can train anyone you want thanks to scrolls and wide availability and a lot of weapon uses and a lot of help for bad characters if you want to give it to them. So it's usable, but relatively speaking, he's still pretty bad. And really the same goes for Hicks, where it's like, alright, at least Hicks joins in chapter 6, so he has got a little bit of master escape utility. He's got a mount, so you don't have to worry about escaping with him, frickin' Dalsin. And he can actually carry people around. He can kill stuff with the halberd that he joins with, or with the brave axe that you get from a house that you can like transfer into Manster. I kind of like the brave axe into Manster now a lot, and he can make pretty good use of it because it's only B rank, and Hicks joins with like a B rank and axes, which is pretty insane. That probably explains why his bases are worse than Brighton's and why he doesn't have Wrath like Brighton does. They were like, alright, let's give him a higher axe rank, and then that will probably balance it out, because Hicks' stats leave a lot to be desired. He's bulky. I remember him having like 30 base HP and then like decent-ish defense, but not a lot else. Like mostly the speed department, he could really use some more. He's got some accuracy issues, and not being able to use axes indoors kind of gonna hurt him. And so does 5 move there. But outdoors, you know, he's fine. He's not great, but he's fine. He works out alright. You can probably 2-shot stuff with the Brave Axe. I remember him being bulky enough to take ballista shots in chapter 10 and have some utility through that. So he's not unusable. It's just not worth it overall to candidates. But I do think he's better than Robert and Carrion on account of his free utility and his ability to, you know, get somewhere. They can get somewhere too, but that's like their only claim to flame. He has some free utility and more availability as well. So I would say he's better than Femina. About Gordon's round of utility, I would say. Gordon has like the free chapter 1 and then maybe chapter 2 utility, but he drops off real quick. So Hicks is about that much free utility. So I'm fine with putting him in the D tier right here. Alright, Liphis. Much better unit. Much better unit. Pretty good. Let's go up here. These lower tiers are just depressing me a little bit. Let's go a bit up here somewhere. The cool thing about Lifis is, yes, combat is pretty bad. He's got like no luck, so you gotta have him scroll him at all times when he's doing combat. Strength is bad, HP is bad, defense is bad, magic is bad, all this stuff is bad. He's got good speed, so he's got pretty good avoid for most of the time, but everything else is kind of shit. But it's fine, because he doesn't have to fight. He has Thief Utility, and Thief Utility is at its best in Thracia. Of like every game, I would say Thracia has probably the best Thief Utility. There might be an exception. You could argue... I don't even know, man. Thracia has the best Thief Utility, because he can open doors and chests, and that alone is a lot. That alone is a lot of utility right there, because Master's filled with chests, and he's around it for it, all of it. Filled with doors as well. And then like chapter before, chapter 3 also has like quite a few doors to unlock and got a couple chests to get. You do get quite a few chest keys, so he's not alone, but there's almost always room for multiple people to be opening chests, so not a problem. And then he also can steal anything less than his constitution, and for Lifis that means he can steal tomes, like thunder and fire tomes, wind tomes at some point. Not dark tomes, but that's okay. He can steal rapiers, which is pretty nice. He can steal pretty light swords, like iron sword is like too heavy for him. He needs like +1 build to get an iron sword stolen. You can do that to the chapter 8 boss and make him like really easy to capture. You just insta capture him if you can take his iron sword. So if you were lucky to get an early build level up with Lifis, praise the heavens, because you can just steal the iron sword from the chapter 8 boss and not have to bother like capturing him with combat. Alternatively, you could promote him at level 10, but that's not really recommended. But yeah, being able to steal weapons is super nice. That basically lets him 1-round KO every mage you fight ever, for example. Of course, it's risky because, as I said, he's not very durable. Enemies will kill him if they can. They also like to capture him if you give him no weapons, and that is something I do frequently, capture baiting with Lifis. It's a little tricky sometimes if you have like a lot of inventory filled up with random stuff you took and master. It can be hard to, you know, have Lifis captured without losing any weapons that he has on him, because the enemy will take those. So you gotta be a bit careful with that. That's why I don't recommend capturing everything ever, stealing everything ever, and then taking like 16 items into master. I try to limit myself, because it's so hard to capture bait when you have to empty an entire unit's inventory without overflowing, because that's pretty difficult to manage. But yeah, Lifis' utility is second to almost none in Thracia. Let's see, where's the other utility guys at? So, better than Salem, I think so. He's definitely around for longer, and in the mid to late game, there's definitely a lot less stealing going on than in like Master. There's not as many chapters where Lifis is great, and you also have Parn available, so the credit for it gets cut like in half. But I do think overall he has more utility than most of these dudes. I don't know if he deserves to be over Orson and Fergus, because their combat is very exceptional. I do think it's better than Alone, so I'm gonna put him up here. I realize that there's like a lot of I'm clustering units together a lot from like the same game. That's because they're easy to compare that way. It really is. So I'm gonna put him around here somewhere. I think A+ tier is alright. I could see him up in S tier, I honestly could, but I think A+ is fine for him, because I'm having trouble finding enough reasons to put him over Orson and Fergus. Then we have Selfina. Take a selfie. Nah, get it? She's better than Robert. I'm going to say that right off the bat. They joined up around the same time, but Selfina's stats are better at base. She has more everything, basically. And she has the Accost skill, which is mostly beneficial for an archer. Like, if you're going to have it, having it on a unit that shoots from range is nice, because just like with Dagdar, if you have more HP and more attack speed than your opponent at the start of combat, you will attack twice. And the same goes for if an enemy attacks you, which is annoying for her, because that means she probably gets one out by a ballista or something, but most of the time it helps you. Selfina doesn't have a whole lot of HP, so there's a lot of enemies that she just doesn't have more HP compared to them, and that means charge won't always activate, and it might actually be wise to try to micromanage that a little bit, maybe, but for most part I just try to keep her out of combat, which is pretty easy when you have a horse and a ranged weapon and Kanto. That works out pretty well, and you just use her to shoot stuff, and for the most part it will be with her killer bow. It's not a big advantage she has over Robert if she has a B rank in bows compared to his E rank, so she's able to use weapons like the killer bow, and later on the brave bow, which you get from Glade by talking with her to Glade, who is also here. Nice power couple recommendation right here. So talk to Glade in chapter 13, get the brave bow, shoot stuff, one round it, easy peasy, pretty good. The drawback is, like I said, Thracia is not very combat heavy, and using her is a bit of a risk, because she can get one round because of her skill, so I don't think she's that great. I don't know if she's in the entire tier over Robert. I would say she's like bottom of C tier, honestly. She's not great, but she's okay. I'm gonna put her like below Erica, I think. Maybe even like in the high region of the D tier, because I think she has some like... almost every playthrough of Thracia I do, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna use some units I haven't used before. I'm gonna use Selfina, and then a couple years later I'm like, You know what? Selfina is not even in the top 10 of units I want to deploy right now. She's benched. She's done. Like, there's just not that much demand for her. And I find units like Ronan to be much more fun to use. My bias towards Ronan probably isn't helping here. If I wasn't using Ronan like every time I play Thracia, maybe I'd have more demand for the Brave Bow. But even trying to set that aside for a moment, I just don't think Selfina is that great. She has some strength issues, she has some durability issues, and she can't really fight on enemy phase very well because it's so risky. And Thracia, when there's a lot of combat, it tends to be pretty enemy phase based. Like chapter 14, for example, you better have a good enemy phase if you want to fight through that. So chapters like that, I don't think Selfina contributes a whole lot. And there's not a whole lot of utility she has outside of that, besides rescue dropping, which is pretty widespread in utility. Alright, next we have Glade, Selfina's husband. Cool couple, they're kind of nice. Finn's old friend as well. Glade, I think he once ranked bottom of Choose Your Legends. I think for Choose Your Legends 1 he actually made it like rock bottom. And not because everyone hated him, because just no one knew who he was. I mean, Thracia is one of the least played games in the franchise, and not a lot of people really care about it. And then this guy is like one of the most unremarkable people in Thracia of all. I mean, he looks like a generic, honestly. But I like him, he's pretty cool. He's got decent bases, he can one-round stuff with the Silverlands, not Armor Knights, but pretty much everything else that's slow enough to get doubled, which is, you know, a lot of stuff. And A-rank Lances is pretty good like that. Can't use the Brave Lance like Finn can, but he can still get a hold of a good weapon and do some good work. Like if you captured like a Master Lance, for example, you can kick some ass with that. His bases aren't what you call like super broken. Like if you trained Fergus and every now and then gave him scrolls and stuff, he'll be better, for example. Finn will probably look a lot better than him, but he's still going to be decent in his own right. The main claim to fame that Glade really has is his 1 leadership star. That means he contributes by just deploying him, do nothing at all. You could just like keep Glade at the starting spot where he starts in, and he'll give all your units +3 of hit and avoid. Now, depending on the situation, that's either going to be massive overkill or pretty useful. And for a lot of chapters, it might be a bit overkill. If you have like a lot of trained units trained up with scrolls, give them the auto scroll every now and then, they'll probably have like pretty good hit rates and will pretty much never die as long as you're careful enough. But when it really comes in handy, it's chapters where you face a lot of opposition leadership to negate the enemy leadership advantage. Chapters with Sias there, or like a lot of commanders with like 4 to 5 stars. That's when Glade's contributions can really make a difference, but it's not one you really see very much. It's not like, he doesn't really come in clutch very much. It's not like, alright, I beat this enemy thanks to Glade's contributions. It's more like, alright, Glade made this one enemy slightly more reliable, and he did like 20 times over the course of the map, so overall he contributed a lot, but you never really see Glade coming in clutch. And I think that's another reason why I think even Thracia players don't really attribute him very much. They don't really thank Glade like they thank someone like Safi or even Orson, or even like, I don't know, if they're using Ronan a lot, they might thank Ronan, or like Marita coming in clutch a lot. Stuff like that doesn't really happen with Glade, because his contributions are mostly invisible, but they are there. It's important to acknowledge them, and I think it's important that we at least put him in C tier somewhere. Maybe even, I wouldn't say B tier. He's not that good. But like, it's really hard to rate this guy. I'm gonna put him above Olwen for sure. Definitely above Brighton. Yeah, I think he's better than these guys. Like, this is just an intuition, right? Better than Ilios for sure. How about the top of the B tier? How about that? Like, someone who helps you for half of the game with just a very passive support option and, you know, decent combat, honestly. Not great combat. I've never been super impressed with it, but it's pretty good. It's pretty alright. I'm gonna put him at the top of C tier, and I could see him even in B-, honestly. It's pretty hard to rate the character like this. It's literally just support and then decent but not super great combat. And then finally, we have my boy Leaf, one of my favorites. I've never really hid my love for Leaf and Thracia in general, so I have no qualms about tiering him anywhere whatsoever. I love my boy. This looks like his FE4 portrait, doesn't it? Hold on, let me double check this. This really looks like FE4 Leaf. 1 second. I knew it. I knew it. It was FE5 Leaf that I had to tier though, so this guy is going to stay on the bench for a little longer. But I expect he'll be submitted sometime soon anyway. This is the guy we're tiering. This anime hair guy looks super cool and all, but he's going to be safe for another time. Yeah, FE5 Leaf. I made a waifu on him, so I'm going to be like short but sweet here. And if you want to watch more opinions about Leaf, just watch the Leaf waifu. It was edited by Hoshi. It looks absolutely amazing, I think, so it's worth a watch if you haven't seen it yet. Leaf, I think, before people called him like bad because his stats are bad at base. Like, sure, his bases are atrocious. His strength, skill, I could just name all his stats and they'd all be bad, and they are all pretty bad. His growth's nothing special. I mean, they're okay by Thracia standards, but nothing special. What sets him apart is the light brand, the fact that he's available for every single chapter. His promotion is also bad, by the way. Haven't mentioned that one yet. +1 to every stat. Yay, very good. Doesn't even give him a horse. But yeah, personal weapon, available for all game. Supports a lot of different characters. And no fatigue is something I don't really care about much personally, because I never really found fatigue to be too impactful to begin with. And it also comes with the drawback of, you know, having to be deployed in every chapter and having a fixed starting position. I think those are somewhat drawbacks. The Blaggy sword on him is pretty good as well. Pretty good weapon in general. Kills like 2 bosses with it, and that's about it. But other characters can use it too. So a lot of like pros to Leaf for sure, like Adept and the Movement Star and the Leadership Star. But a lot of like asterisks to them as well. They were like, yeah, Leadership Star is nice, but it's not like you can undeploy him. So it's basically like a tactician bonus. Adept is nice, but you're never going to count on it, you know, happening. So you kind of have to play as if you're not going to get it, which means you might as well not have it for a lot of the time. The same goes for like the Movement Star. You're going to move as if you're not getting a Movement Star in a turn. So you can try to get one, see if you get it, and maybe get a benefit from it. But generally, you'll play as if you don't have it. So it's not a huge benefit at all. And a lot of like really tiny benefits, they do add up to like a good unit, I think. Especially the availability in Lightbrand, they're all super nice. But overall, I don't think Leaf is like super good. I'm going to put him in the A tier somewhere, but not super high. I do think it's like very important if you're playing fast with Leaf. And getting like some levels is like super nice, but I wouldn't put him super high. I know some people will like Danan. I think Danan said like Leaf is like the best lord in the series or something. Like maybe not the best lord in the series, but pretty close. And if I put him right here, this puts him below Fe1 Marth, which I think is fair, but above Ephraim, which already looks a little bit off if you just compare their stats. But trust me, in Thracia, there's a lot more to a unit than combat in Thracia, but I still think Leaf's additional pros get a bit overrated sometimes by Thracia players. But I still, you know, A+ is still A+. It's still a really good unit, and still one of my favorites. But I don't think he's like worthy of S- or S+. But yeah, watch the waifu. It's a good video, trust. Anyway, those are all the units I actually had to tier. Thanks everyone for submitting them. Thanks for supporting me. It means a lot. And I'm going to go out now and take probably my 2nd shower today. Peace out. Goodbye. And until next time, when I get to the next characters. And I think we're going to start with Fe6 characters. So peace around. Goodbye.